Meanwhile, with just 12 days to go now until Election Day, both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump are taking their campaigns to battleground states, as we have seen in days recent. And as we've mentioned, Hillary Clinton will be in North Carolina today, while Donald Trump will be in Ohio. The latest ABC News Washington Post poll shows today Hillary Clinton beating Trump by 6 points, 48 to 42%. As you see here, third-party candidates Gary Johnson, Dr. Jill Stein idle in single digits. John Heilemann is the co-managing editor of Bloomberg Politics, co-host of the political docu-series The Circus, which airs on Showtime, a division of CBS, a must-watch as the days now dwindle. We're almost to single digits now here.
Thank God. Here we are.
And so I feel like a lot of what's informing the days now seems to as much be informing what will happen after November 8th as what will be put in place on November 8th. Washington Post, there's a story today discussing how female members now of the GOP really feel as though Donald Trump and his chief surrogates have done irreparable damage to the party, not just to the chances of Donald Trump winning. What do you make of these last 48 hours, how they've handled not just the latest round of allegations against the nominee, but also the conversations that exist around them?
Well, just for the the historical perspective, just briefly, right? You remember at the end of 2012, Josh, that there was the GOP autopsy, always unfortunately named because it suggested the party was already dead. But Reince Priebus went and said, hey, there are a bunch of ways in which we have to modernize the party. There are a bunch of things happening in America. The non-white percentage of the electorate and the population is growing. College-educated women is a huge growing segment. We can't be the party of the future or be a majority party at a national level unless we get right with those constituencies. If you abstract away and just say, forget who Donald Trump is, like leave your biases or your prejudices at the door, and I just told you about a Republican nominee who, in the light of that autopsy and its recommendations, said the things that Trump has said over the course of this campaign, turned out to be the person who he's alleged to be, and by that I mean his past of sexual predation that he's accused of. You couldn't imagine a candidate who was more at odds with the kind of sensible prescription of what this party had to do to get right with those constituencies. So, you see, at first it was largely with non-white voters. Now we've been focused for the last couple of weeks on women, and particularly well-educated women. Again, these are all allegations against him, but there are things in those allegations are things that he boasted about on the Access Hollywood tape. So has he alienated those constituencies? Yeah, but making it worse now is things like, Newt Gingrich going on with Megyn Kelly and defending Trump in the way that he's defending him, not just on the merits, but on the tone of it. I feel sympathy for Trump surrogates in this respect. You are in a horrible position. Your loyalty to the man is tested. Maybe the right thing to do would be to walk away. But if you're going to stick with him, how do you defend him? I'll tell you the one thing that's true is that it's not a great idea to go on television or anywhere with a woman and defend him by trashing her in terms that are, offensive to most ears, and particularly to female ears. And I think so, yeah, they're in a hole, but instead of climbing out, they're digging it.
And they also, it seems, are not even defending just a candidate or even just a party. There's the question of the brand, and we saw it again yesterday where Donald Trump, fewer than 2 weeks out, took time away from an admittedly busy schedule, very defensively busy schedule, but to go cut a ribbon and to go prop up a hotel, which by all accounts has not seen the success initially that perhaps they might have hoped for. The brand has become a sticking point, not just for the candidate, but for the party.
If Donald Trump had spent the last 6 months building a campaign around the notion that he was a can-do businessman and he built things and he understood how to be a job creator and how to get things done ahead of schedule and under budget, as he said yesterday. If that had been a core thematic of his campaign, we would be looking at this event yesterday and saying, he gave a pretty good speech yesterday. He was calm, he was composed, he made an actual argument. There wasn't a lot of invective. He didn't say anything offensive. He didn't have any gaffes. You'd say that makes a lot of sense, even to go off the campaign trail for that, if it was part of a sustained argument and a sustained narrative. The problem is that in the absence of having made that argument for 6 months, it feels like what it looked like, which was, what's he doing in Washington, D.C. when he's behind in almost every battleground state, and the hours are dwindling, and the minutes are dwindling, and every one of them is precious, and he needs to be staging a historic comeback in a dozen states. He's in a state now that, he's spending time in a state that cannot help him because there are 3 electoral votes and it's one of the most democratic places in the entire country. So again, it's like the whole Trump campaign is a bunch of woulda, coulda, shoulda beens, right? He did a speech before the last debate in Las Vegas where he did an ethics reform speech, which was, again, like if you were running a populist campaign, a drain the swamp speech that imposed new limits on the revolving door on lobbying.
It's what you want to hear.
It would have been a perfectly solid speech. Again, if he'd started giving that speech in May, and again, he hadn't done all the other things he's done to make problems for himself, it would have been a perfectly fine thing. But all of these things are coming at the point where he's so far behind that to give a solid workmanlike speech on ethics reform or to cut the ribbon at your hotel and say on time or ahead of schedule and under budget, it just feels like all like way too little and way too late.
Well, and these decisions do end up feeling perhaps as they swallow whole what would otherwise be political gifts, whether it was the daily WikiLeaks dumps, whether it was even the latest here that we're now seeing perhaps the idea of the Clinton Foundation as being this tangent point between personal enrichment, basically all the things that have been said. What damage does this latest revelation as it regards Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation, does it do any damage in this climate?
To me, look, I want to preface this by saying many people have suspected that the Clinton Foundation was an organization that did a lot of good in the world, but also was about the personal enrichment of President Clinton and the Clinton family, right? People have said that for a long time. That's not news. But these emails lay it out in a really vivid, kind of garish, somewhat sickening way, just how kind of gross it was and how overt it was. So do I think it looks bad? It looks really bad. It's confirming something that I think most people already suspected or knew. But does it have any effect on the real lives of real people, of voters out in America? This has been the problem with all, politically speaking, the issue with all of these WikiLeaks disclosures is most of them have been fascinating, and in some cases have provided a damning window on how the Clintons operate, how she relates to her staff, the degrees to which they recognize political vulnerabilities and did nothing to fix them, all that stuff. But as compared to what actual voters care about and what affects their lives, and set against the accusations against Donald Trump and the way in which those things are immediately relatable to more than half of the population, women, when you hear him boasting about sexual predation and then you have more than a dozen women come forward and accuse him. In terms of information flow, the Trump stuff is just wildly going to overshadow all of the stuff that's come out from these WikiLeaks things.
These things don't play essentially as straws that might break a camel's back.
I don't think they do. Yeah. I continue to maintain, like, if there was a WikiLeaks disclosure that demonstrated that Hillary Clinton was directly involved in some kind of, like, on the face of it, criminal activity, that I think might very well break through. But a lot of this other stuff just feels like, as I said, mostly inside baseball and mostly confirmations of things that people have already suspected about them for a long time.
As we know in this campaign, if none other, 12 days is an awful long time. Yes.
Yes, it could not pass quickly enough for me.
Mr. Ringmaster, may it never end.
Oh, God, thank you, Josh. Kill me, apparently.
John Heilemann, as always.